I was the most radiant of all angels. My light shone like no other, and I walked in the heights of heaven, close to the throne of the Almighty. I was Lucifer, the bearer of light, created to lead and reflect divine glory. But pride grew within my heart, and I desired more. I desired to be equal to the Creator himself. Rebellion was born within me, and with it, my fall. Cast out of heaven, I became the adversary, the one who would challenge the divine plan. Today, I am here to tell you the true story, my story, from glory to darkness, from brilliance to eternal exile.
In the beginning, Lucifer was crafted by the hand of the Almighty himself. He was not just any angel. Lucifer was created to be a reflection of divine light, the bearer of brilliance, known as the morning star. His radiance filled the heavens, and he stood among the highest ranks of celestial beings, the cherubim, those closest to the throne of God. He was adorned with splendor, his very being reflecting every color of the cosmos, and his wings spread wide, shimmering with a golden glow like the dawn. He led countless angels in their worship, his voice among those leading the celestial choirs, echoing through the endless expanse of the heavens. Lucifer knew the secrets of heaven, walked the pathways of divine wisdom, and felt the pulse of eternity flowing within him. He was beloved, magnificent, and held the power of leadership over many of the heavenly hosts. His place was at the top, a creation that embodied radiance, wisdom, and might. In those early times, he knew nothing but the glory of light, serving his Creator with pride. But something began to change. As Lucifer continued to lead, to shine, and to reflect divine beauty, he became aware of his own magnificence. He began to see himself as more than just a servant of God. His beauty was unparalleled, his wisdom unmatched, and his power undeniable. This was the first spark, a flicker of pride that would soon ignite into something far greater, something dangerous. The other angels looked at Lucifer with reverence, admiration filling their gaze. He was not only beautiful, but wise, more than any of the other celestial beings. Lucifer's brilliance was so profound that it began to eclipse the one thing that mattered most: his devotion to God. As time moved on in the celestial realms, Lucifer's admiration for himself began to take deeper root. He was no longer simply content with being among the angels. He began to see himself as deserving of more. He gazed at his reflection in the waters of heaven and saw not just an angel, but a being of unimaginable beauty and power. The pride within him grew stronger with each passing day. He began to believe that his light, his wisdom, and his presence were more significant than those of his fellow angels. The whisper of pride turned into a voice that echoed in his mind, repeating one persistent thought: "You could be more. You deserve to be like the Most High." This wasn't just a fleeting notion. It became a desire, a hunger that Lucifer could no longer ignore. He began to compare his brilliance to the Creator himself. Why should he bow? Why should he serve when his light could shine as brightly as that of the Almighty? It was in these thoughts that the seeds of rebellion began to germinate. Lucifer's pride shifted from admiration to ambition. He no longer wished to reflect the glory of God. He wished to possess that glory himself. He wanted to sit upon the throne, to command the heavens, to be worshipped as the supreme being. He believed in his own superiority so deeply that he could see no other path but one in which he would rise to absolute power. Lucifer's charm and natural leadership made him influential among the angels. Slowly, he began to gather followers. He spoke to them in secret, planting doubts about their roles, about their submission to God. He whispered promises of freedom, of greatness, that could be theirs if only they would follow him. The other angels, mesmerized by his beauty and conviction, began to listen. His words were enticing. They spoke of equality, of being released from what Lucifer painted as servitude. In his speeches, Lucifer portrayed himself as a beacon of change, one who could lead them to a greater existence. He masked his ambition with words of justice and equality, painting his rebellion as a noble cause. To some of the angels, this vision was appealing. They were dazzled by his radiance, his wisdom, and the boldness of his words. He promised them a future where they could be more, where they would no longer have to bow to a higher power, but instead share in that power. And so, the followers began to gather. They whispered among themselves, forming a coalition that believed in Lucifer's vision of a new celestial order. They saw him as their leader, the one who could give them what they never thought to desire: autonomy, freedom from divine command. They saw in Lucifer the possibility of a different heaven, one where they could shine independently. The whispers among the angels had grown into a roar. Lucifer, now with legions of angels by his side, was ready to confront the order of heaven. No longer content with his radiant beauty, wisdom, and leadership, he sought the very throne of God. The plan was set in motion. It wasn't just a rebellion. It was a declaration of war against the Creator. Lucifer gathered his followers, and in the midst of the heavenly realms, he made his move. His presence, once a beacon of divine light, was now darkened by ambition and pride. The angels who remained loyal to God watched in disbelief as Lucifer, once their leader and inspiration, turned against everything they stood for. The armies of heaven were divided. On one side stood the rebellious Lucifer and his loyal followers, their wings spread wide, their eyes burning with defiance and ambition. On the other side, the loyal angels, led by the archangel Michael, prepared themselves to defend the glory of the Almighty. The air in heaven was thick with tension, a silence that preceded the storm, as both sides faced each other. Lucifer's voice echoed through the heavenly realms as he made his declaration. "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." His words were filled with a mix of anger and pride, and with that declaration, the battle began. The clash of the celestial beings was unlike anything ever seen. Wings collided, light flashed against darkness, and the harmony of heaven was shattered by the cries of angels. Michael, wielding the power given to him by God, led the loyal angels into battle. He confronted Lucifer directly, his voice resounding as he proclaimed, "Who is like God? No one shall take his throne." The clash between Michael and Lucifer was fierce. The once close comrades, now adversaries, each embodying light and darkness, loyalty and rebellion. The moment of defeat came like a thunderclap. Lucifer, in his arrogance, had believed himself invincible, but the power of the divine was unmatchable. Slowly, he and his followers were pushed back. The light of God's loyal angels was too much, overwhelming the darkness that had taken root within Lucifer. The heavens themselves seemed to mourn as Lucifer and his followers were cast out, their brilliant forms falling like stars from the heights of heaven to the depths below. Lucifer's fall was a sight of tragic beauty. His radiant wings darkened, his light extinguished as he descended. The once glorious angel, whose light had filled heaven, now fell into the abyss, his screams echoing as he was stripped of his former glory. Heaven was restored to peace, but a sense of loss lingered. Lucifer, once the bearer of light, was now cast into darkness. He was no longer the morning star, but the adversary, the one who would forever be known as Satan, the enemy of God and all that was good. The fall was devastating, yet it did not break Lucifer's spirit. It twisted it. From the moment he was cast out of heaven, his heart became hardened, and his light, once pure and bright, turned into a darkness that consumed him. Lucifer's desire for power did not disappear. It evolved. If he could not reign in heaven, then he would do everything in his power to destroy what God cherished most, his creation, humanity. He began to see his fall not as an end, but as a new beginning, an opportunity to reshape his role in the cosmic order. Lucifer, now known as Satan, the adversary, found his new purpose. His mission was to undermine God's creation, to taint the pure, and lead humanity astray. His pride now transformed into vengeful drive, and earth became his battleground. Satan moved through the shadows of the world, unseen yet deeply felt. He whispered into the ears of those who would listen, sowing seeds of doubt, fear, and pride. He sought to exploit the very traits that had led to his own fall: ambition, disobedience, and desire. Humanity, with its free will, became his playground. He knew that if he could corrupt even one of them, the ripple effect would be enough to taint all of God's creation. The Garden of Eden, a place of absolute purity, was his first target. In the form of a serpent, Satan approached Eve, the first woman, and spoke the words that would change everything. He planted the idea that God was withholding something, that they could be like God if only they dared to take what was forbidden. It was the same temptation that had driven him, the desire to be equal to the Creator. And humanity, in its innocence, listened. As Adam and Eve fell, Satan watched with satisfaction. This act was not just a victory. It was a validation of his belief that God's creation was fragile and that everything pure could be corrupted. It was the beginning of his campaign against humanity, where earth became his domain of influence. With his fall complete and his purpose set, Satan began to weave his influence into the hearts and minds of humanity. He saw the fragility of humans, their hunger for knowledge, power, and freedom, and knew he could use these desires to lead them away from their Creator. Eden had been his first triumph, but it would not be the last. He had tasted victory, and now he sought to continue his campaign, to corrupt the divine creation. Satan's approach was one of subtlety. He whispered to those who were alone, afraid, or desperate. He spoke to kings, to the ambitious, and to those who craved what was beyond their reach. His voice was a quiet murmur, planting doubts, inflaming pride, and kindling desires that led people away from the path of righteousness. He appealed to human weaknesses, turning them into vices. Envy, greed, anger, and lust all became tools in his hands. He showed people power and convinced them it was theirs for the taking. He promised knowledge and autonomy, turning what was forbidden into something desirable. Humanity's free will became his opportunity, and each choice that leaned toward sin was another step away from God and closer to darkness. Satan didn't need to show himself openly. He thrived in the shadows of human desires. In the wilderness, he even attempted to tempt Jesus, offering him the kingdoms of the world, hoping to sway him. But unlike Adam and Eve, Jesus resisted, seeing through the lies and standing firm. This defeat was a blow to Satan, yet he continued his work, targeting those more susceptible to his influence. Throughout history, Satan would be there, in the shadows of humanity's greatest downfalls, feeding jealousy, hatred, and fear. He did not need to rule openly. He influenced, deceived, and led people down paths of destruction. To Satan, every act of betrayal, every lie, every soul led astray was a victory. Proof that creation was flawed and that none could be truly pure. From the moment he was cast out of heaven, Satan understood that his existence would be defined by one eternal struggle: the battle between good and evil. This conflict was not fought with swords, but in the hearts and souls of men and women. Satan's greatest weapon was his ability to manipulate the desires and fears that lay within each human being. The struggle between good and evil was constant and relentless. Satan knew that the human heart could be swayed, and he used this knowledge to make evil seem appealing. He took what was beautiful and distorted it, turned truth into lies, and blurred the lines between right and wrong. In every generation, in every era, he continued his campaign, finding those who were vulnerable and drawing them away from the light. But Satan was not alone in this battle. On the side of light stood the archangels, the heavenly hosts, and those faithful to God's divine plan. Michael, who had once cast Satan from heaven, remained as a defender of righteousness, guiding and protecting humanity from the influence of darkness. The loyal angels worked tirelessly, shielding humanity, offering hope, and counteracting Satan's every move. For Satan, the battle was not just a fight against heaven's angels, but against hope itself. He tried to extinguish hope, knowing that as long as hope remained, people could still return to the light. And yet, time after time, humans found redemption, resisted temptation, and turned back to God. Each act of faith a reminder that the light could not be fully overcome. The conflict between good and evil would never end, as long as free will existed. Satan had embraced his role, but he knew that the struggle was eternal. There would always be those who chose to resist, who sought love and light despite the pain and darkness. To him, the work was never complete. As long as there was light, there would be darkness waiting to challenge it. As centuries passed, Satan often reflected on the events that led to his fall. He remembered the beauty and glory that once surrounded him, the light, the music, the divine presence. Yet, there was no true regret for his rebellion. To Satan, his fall was not a mistake, but an act of defiance that defined his very essence. He had lost everything: his place among the cherubim, his light, and his status as the morning star. But he did not mourn the loss of heaven. Instead, he embraced his new identity. The pain of losing his light had turned into hatred, and that hatred became the driving force behind his actions. He sought to prove that God's creation was inherently flawed, that even the most righteous could be led astray. Satan found a twisted sense of purpose in his role as the adversary. Every time a human chose sin over righteousness, he saw it as proof that his rebellion was justified. He was no longer Lucifer, the bringer of light. He was Satan, the adversary, the eternal opposition to all that was good. His reflections were not filled with remorse, but with a dark sense of purpose. He had chosen his side and was determined to see his role fulfilled to its bitter end. The story of Lucifer is a powerful reminder of the dangers of pride and ambition. It shows us that every choice has consequences, and that even the brightest beings can fall into darkness when consumed by the desire for power. His tale is not just about rebellion in heaven. It's about the rebellion that can take place within each of us.
You have heard my story, a tale of rebellion, ambition, and the price of pride. My fall was not an accident, it was a choice, a path I chose willingly. And now I ask you, what path will you choose? You may not have wings, nor the power of angels, but you have something greater: free will. Will you succumb to your own desires? Let pride take root, as it did within me? Or will you choose the light, fight against the whispers of darkness that I so eagerly plant in your mind? The choice is always yours, and in that choice lies your true power. Remember, I am always here, watching, waiting, ready to lead you astray. The question is, will you follow?
As we reflect on Lucifer's story, let us remember the importance of humility, of choosing love, and of resisting the allure of pride. The battle between good and evil is not just a cosmic struggle. It is a struggle that occurs within each of us, every day. If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments below. Share your thoughts on what it means to choose between light and darkness in your own life. Remember, God blesses those who seek His light, and every day is a new opportunity to choose the right path. If you found this message powerful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more content like this to you. May God's blessings be with you all.